On this episode of the InsurTech Geek Podcast, we're talking about driving innovation at the nation's largest lawyers malpractice insurer with David Bell from ALPS.
The InsurTech Geek Podcast is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech. So enjoy the ride and geek out.
Terra. This week's episode sponsor is revolutionizing the world of workers' compensation claims and policy management. Terra's cutting-edge platform empowers insurers with comprehensive benchmarking tools, robust management systems, and an integrated ancillary services marketplace. Discover how Terra is driving innovation and efficiency in workers' comp at terra.insure.
And we are back with another great episode of the InsurTech Geek Podcast. I am James Benham, your InsurTech Geek. Here in beautiful College Station, Texas. That's right. We call it God's country. You can call it Aggie Land. With me today from a very different place, but also the home of big skies and wide open spaces. One of my favorite country songs, Wide Open Spaces. Mr. David Bell from Montana. How's it going, David?
It's going great. Thanks for having me here. I'm not going to sing along with you there, but it's fun to be on a podcast that is unapologetically geek-centric.
Yes, we are. Geek is in the name because I view geek as a badge of honor. That's why I've always kept it in there. You know, David, I just presented in Montana. I was in Billings, and as my opener, I talked about the things that are similar about Texas and Montana. You know, we're everything's bigger in Texas, and it's what's called big skies, right? So they say in Montana, big skies,
big sky country. Yep,
big sky country. So big. Okay, so that's kind of similar. A lot of people drive trucks. I mean, you go to an average parking lot here, tons of trucks. Same in Montana.
Same in Montana. A lot of times of the year, the truck's the only thing that's going to get you through.
Exactly. Taylor Sheridan has significant operations in both of our states, where he produces my favorite shows. True.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Lots of prequels and sequels and everything they can wring out of that storyline.
Yep. And he and some of his buddies bought the 4 Sixes Ranch here in Texas. So he films a lot there, films a lot in Austin. Also, of course, has filmed a ton in Montana. I'm sure there's mixed feelings about him in Montana, right?
Yeah, I think years ago we used to say that a river runs through it, ruined fly fishing in Montana, and now some people like to say that Yellowstone just ruined Montana.
Just ruined all of Montana. It's like all ruined now.
Yeah, but it is fun to travel around the country and even in different parts of the world. And almost predictably, the first thing people ask is it really like that? And so Yellowstone certainly has shown a lot of the beautiful landscape that we live in here, even if it does depict the lifestyle in Montana with a bit of hyperbole.
Well, it's got to sell on TV, right?
Uh-huh.
It's got to be entertaining and exciting, and it does nothing if not that, right? Of course, I love all of Sheridan's stuff, so I'm a huge fan of Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone, which I thought was just phenomenal. So I'm a big fan of the guy. Also common between Montana and Texas, both big football states, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, now your big rivalry there is what, Montana State? Is that right?
That's right. The University of Montana Grizzlies, which is where I'm at here in Missoula, Montana, and then the Montana State Bobcats, which are in Bozeman at Montana State. Both great schools. I tend to be a little preferential to the Grizz, as you might imagine.
I can imagine that. So were you born and raised up there? Is this your home state?
I wasn't. I was born in Florida, actually in Miami. Kind of grew up nomadically, lived in different states around the country, and then came to college here after having waited tables in Jackson Hole, Wyoming for the summer and fell in love with the West, came out here for school, and then joined Chubb out of college. And I was back in the Chubb training program and bounced around different parts of the country, and then returned after having lived in different places around the country and the world, returned to Montana with my wife, who is from here. Her family are original homesteaders, probably much more reminiscent of the Taylor Sheridan storyline. And so Brittany and I decided to move back to Montana in 2012 from Bermuda, where we had lived for over a decade.
Well, I can't think of a bigger transition than Bermuda to Montana if you're in the Western Hemisphere. That's a big shift.
culturally, climatically, economically. I mean, it is it spans a gamut. We knew what we were coming back to, which was great, but it was nothing if not a change.
Yeah, that's like shocking, right? I
Hmm.
mean, this weekend I got the privilege of going to Mexico City for the second time in a couple of years. And it was funny because it's an hour and 45-minute flight from Houston to Mexico City, and it's a complete world away, right? Like it's so close yet so far away. And so it's funny how sometimes that is, even from Bermuda to Montana. It's not all the way across the world. It is a long way away. They are very distant from each other, but they are a world apart in a lot of areas. I mean, Bermuda's a major insurance haven, which is obviously why you were there, correct?
Correct. Yep. I went over when Chubb and AIG and Goldman Sachs Capital Partners collectively founded AWAC at the time, Allied World. And so we went over in early 2002 to start AWAC.
So I mean, that's a pretty neat rise though, because you were a exec protection manager at Chubb, right?
Hmm.
And then you went into SVP of Global Professional Lines at Allied World Insurance, and you ended up being the chief operating officer there for like 5 years. So I mean, you that was a pretty rapid rise. Like, what did Allied World Assurance do? It was a Bermuda captive, or like what was the point of that?
It was a global. It was and remains. It was bought by Fairfax, so it still operates under the Allied World brand, but is a wholly owned subsidiary of Fairfax, which is a Canadian domiciled public company, great company. And AWAC was started to fill the vacuum that occurred with the just unprecedented loss of life and property in 9/11. And so it was what's affectionately referred to as the class of 2001, where as has happened in several cycles of post-event, capital flows into Bermuda because you can start a new company in a fraction of the time as it would take to tip up a company in domestically, since we are regulated by each of the 50 states independently.
Yeah, that's it because their laws are so much more amenable to getting things up and running.
Yeah, you tip it up, and the business that you do domestically, you pay a federal excise tax, and it does become kind of one-stop shopping. And you end up seeing had cycles, but you certainly end up seeing significant capital inflows in the wake of major events, which was Hurricane Andrew, 9/11, Katrina, Rita, Wilma with the KRW events. And so you definitely, if you look at the capital inflows to Bermuda, you can see a high correlation with those post-event scenarios.
That's awesome. Yeah, I that's really neat. Well, in 2012, you left being COO to be president and CEO of ALPS. Like, what? First off, what is ALPS? ALPS. What does that company do?
Yeah,
Your
so
company.
ALPS has been for since its origin, which was founded in the wake of the S&L crisis, when there was a really a kind of a violent vacuum of commercially available malpractice insurance, particularly for small firms. But really, it was a crisis for all lawyers' professional liability. But it was especially acute for small firms in rural communities. So ALPS was founded as one of what's called the NABRICOs, National Association of Bar-Related Insurance Companies. There's several of them still around, most of them single state. And I really, frankly, I knew of the CEO, my predecessor, the founder of the company. I knew and liked him, as I had worked to try to help stimulate the industry of insurance in the state of Montana, even from afar, when I was on the board of Plus and otherwise. But um, I hadn't thought about working here. And then, as you pointed out, Brittany and I decided to move back to Montana in 2012. We had redomesticated Allied World to Switzerland. I was in New York a lot, and it was becoming more of a challenge to kind of run the rhythm. So we decided to come back to Montana. I thought I was going to go to politics or business or something like that, and then whether it was serendipity or divinity or whatever was at play, the opportunity to come and join this company at what was a pivotal point in this company's life cycle. It had gone through a problematic acquisition, and so it created a kind of an inflection point. And next thing you know, the best laid plans. Here we are, and it's been now we're 13 years later, and it's been nothing but a blessing and a great ride. And I've made so many great friends and have been able to raise our kids. Our kids were first grade and kindergarten when we moved back here, and now they're both off and in college.
Yeah, so this is the childhood they remember. I mean, you don't really remember much before kindergarten as a kid, right? You remember everything from grade school and on. Well, ALPS is it is the nation's leader in insurance for single lawyer law firms and small law firms, right? So it's the total, and it's like a BOP for a law firm, essentially.
Yeah, it's direct. Yeah, and we do sell BOPs and all of the products that small law firms, commercial products that small law firms need. But the specialty of ALPS and its origin has been the LPL, the legal malpractice.
Yeah.
But what differentiated ALPS for so long is that it's been singularly focused on the direct channel. We this year in April we bought Lawyer Care from ProAssurance, so we now have a broker channel and brand as well. But the origin of ALPS was really focused on the direct side.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it's been interesting on this show. We've covered a lot of insurtechs that have started up with the goal of disintermediating brokers and going direct with whatever line of business. You look at some of the bigger ones, and they were large personal lines property carriers and rental insurance carriers that decided, hey, we're going to go direct, and a lot of them have really fallen flat on their face and had to pivot their entire distribution model into pursuing brokers because of how expensive it is in certain lines of business to compete for mind share and for distribution. And especially in their case, their marketing costs just almost drove them out of business in a lot of these cases because it was just so expensive to buy AdWords online and compete against the major national brands for personal lines policies. This is not personal lines, right? This is commercial lines. You're selling to lawyers. So, I mean, you can go to probably, you and the ABA are probably like best friends as far as speaking and attending events and exhibiting, I assume. You have a niche audience, so you can really focus your distribution dollars, right?
We do, but the challenges that the insurtechs face are challenges that we face as well, because for the direct side anyway, the ALP side, because it is expensive. And I think we can all acknowledge that the way that particularly commercial insurance trades in our industry is grossly inefficient and ripe for innovation. And these insurtechs, I think, brought a reasonable thesis to the table that if you build a system that provides a easier, smoother experience for the consumer, that they will abandon the way that this business has traded for as long as it's traded and move to that. And I think that that's proven to be a much more difficult ask than anyone really expected. I do think that it's probably true particularly for the small, low premium, low commission business, and that's kind of the niche where we operate. It's more true there because there's not a lot of competition from brokers in that business because it's not very attractive business for brokers. But finding your prospects, courting them, contacting them, courting them many times over a multi-year process for a $2,000 policy, and then having them go out of business or retire or leave the practice 2 years later. There's a lot of friction in the operational model, so it's a challenge. And so it's also a blessing because it's a challenge. It's not a commodity, and not everybody tries to rush into it. And so I think what we've tried to do is figure out what we're good at, establish that niche, and then press the accelerator. And we've been pretty fortunate. We've got a lot of really good people here at ALPS that think about how to make the experience better for our customers day in and day out.
Well, that involves all the digital properties too, right? I mean,
That's right.
applying for the policy, renewing the policy. Of course, I love on your website, biggest, brightest buttons are apply now and renew. So
That's right.
you're definitely, you're featuring your Trustpilot scores. You do some obvious things that tech companies do with their websites, which is you've made it very conversion focused, right?
That's right.
And like your three major action items you'd want to do, which is apply, renew, and report a claim, are all easily viewable and accessible. So you pass a lot of the tests for an insurtech.
Sure.
Did you have to put a lot of work into that process of the application to try and make it less questions, less burdensome for all these law firms, since you only work in one area? Did you put a lot of user experience time into the initial application to try and chop down the pain point that usually is for folks?
Absolutely, and it's not a past tense question. It's a constant ongoing. I mean, we watch the data on where our customers slow down or get stuck on our application process, and we rephrase questions, move around questions based on where we show early indication of rates, and so you have to put your thumb firmly pressed on the pulse of consumer behavior and meet them where they're at to lower the abandonment. Nothing is worse than spending a lot of time and a lot of money to bring a customer across the threshold of your doorstep and then have them abandon the process halfway through because something about the experience you provided doesn't make entire sense to them. We've got folks around here who are vigilant on understanding that and making adjustments, and we're constantly making those adjustments.
Yeah, well, you sound like a tech company right now. Pipeline abandonment is like every tech CEO's worst nightmare, right? Because you're just your cost per click and your cost per lead, really drive you crazy, and then you get them, 60% of the way through through signing up, and they leave, and you're like, oh my gosh, what on earth did we do now? And of course, if you get in, do y'all get into split testing where you're actually split testing button colors and user interface design on the application itself?
Absolutely. There's very few things that we do that we don't A/B test, and we do them in different parts of the country with different profiles of prospects, and ultimately what prevails is what has the best user experience and the numbers outcome. I mean, we are nothing if not a data-driven organization.
I love that. And again, that's a very similar conversation that all of us have in tech every day is really about abandonment. Let's talk about systems. I mean, I'm curious. Did you start out licensing? I mean, this company predates you. You were brought in. You're not the founder, right?
Correct. Yep.
So, but you've been running it for what? This is your 14th year or so running this company now. So you got your fingerprints all over this organization. Did you come in and you had a legacy off the shelf system that ran this whole operation? Have you kept that system, or do you do custom dev to build your own stuff? Like, tell me what the technology mix. Again, I don't need the nerdy, super nerdy details. I'm just curious, is like off the shelf versus built yourself. What did it look like 12, 13 years ago? What does it look like now?
Yeah. So 12, 13 years ago, there's its own proprietary system that handled everything from underwriting, accounting claims, and the like. And then we rebuilt a separate replacement system that we released just over 5 years ago using an external vendor, but we own the source code and kind of we re-operationalized everything, used the opportunity of rebuilding the tech to reinvent operational workflows, remove inefficiencies, try to get that ball from bouncing back and forth between groups too many times, and then release that. Since then, we've become much more of an API, and I'm going to quickly venture beyond my domain of technical literacy, but we use HubSpot for our CRM. We're plugging in more and more of these vendors that have slick tools, and so compatibility becomes the new name of the game, where we're kind of operating the main heartbeat of the body, but we need the body to be able to accept APIs from all of these other vendors who are creating truly fascinating new tools for our industry. But unless you're prepared to onboard that and integrate it into your existing technology, it's not going to do you much good.
Do you have an example? And you don't have to name the vendor. You don't have to get very specific. In fact, you could just tell me the type of product that you think is like really revolutionary in what it offers for lawyers.
Well, in terms of our internal tech, we have one vendor that speaks to just the observation that you made, that gives us a highly voyeuristic window into the experience that the consumer is having. We know who's on, where they're at geographically. You can watch them as they go through the process, and we're watching because we want to provide them the best, most streamlined, easily to understand process possible. And so in doing that, it completely reframed my own understanding of how my interaction with different websites works. I no longer am naive enough to think that I'm simply interacting with a website. I realize that there's an entire ecosystem of people behind that business who are probably have as much knowledge about where I'm going to go next as I do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I use some tools that I've used tools like that for a very long time. One that used to be around, it's not around anymore. It's called Chartbeat, and I started using that 15 years ago, and it told me everything going on all the time: heat map, workflows, what button they were clicking, what was popular. It told me everything: who abandoned, who dumped out. I've got one now that I'm using that's really cool because it tells me. I mean, it gives me the LinkedIn profiles on everybody visiting the website. Like
Wow.
just straight up. Here's all the LinkedIn profiles from everyone that came to your site today. And I was like, holy crap. Like that is it is really amazing because it cuts through all the noise, right? It's no more anonymous visitors. It gives you here's all the LinkedIn. And then of course you have your outbound team do all these warm outreach to people that are already on your
Hmm.
website, already found you. Yeah, so it's pretty remarkable how good tech is now on helping you analyze pipeline. Because of course, you've got it dialed in on operations. Do you handle? Oh, actually, I want to pivot topics for a second. You really dive into the problems your users have, right? The legal malpractice industry, right? I mean, you have to. I mean, you're
Yeah, I mean, because think about this company at its origins was started by lawyers for lawyers to address a crisis, and that history carries through the DNA of the company. I mean, this is a company that's got a lot of former private practice attorneys, people who have been to law school, people who care deeply about the profession. We are an insurance company, and our job is to make a profit and do it ethically and transparently, but we also care deeply and authentically about the practice of law and the legal profession. And so how we write our policies, how we design the consumer experience is very much wired in a way that's as if you'd be trying to serve a friend or family member in their experience with your company.
Yeah, and you're an AM Best A rated carrier, right? So you obviously are doing something right. You've got a premier rating. You're all up in your client's business. You understand the problem because you have people that were actually in your client's shoes. What do you think today is the biggest issue? And let's take tech and put it on the side because it's not a tech question. What's the biggest challenge for the legal malpractice industry right now?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, and it's a challenge that we're kind of seeing as an opportunity as a byproduct, is that culturally the billable hour gerbil wheel, such as it is really a grind. And I think there, with increasing frequency, attorneys are deciding that they are going to leave multi-member, mid-size or large firms and start their own firm or a small firm, really chasing a better work-life balance. And that, of course, inures to our benefit because we serve that smallest niche. But it's good for us in the context of there being new business opportunities. It's a real warning sign for the profession, to speak directly to your question, James, because when you survey people in this profession, there is an alarmingly high percent that are not happy and would question whether they would recommend their own kids come into the profession. That sentiment tends to skew very heavily towards the mid-size and large-size firms. We actually just surveyed the solo community in particular, and there is a significantly higher percentage. I think 3 out of 4 were indicated that they were professionally satisfied. Don't quote me on that exactly. If there's show notes, we can post the actual survey into your show notes. But and it makes sense if you're a sole proprietor, you do have to kind of chase your own, to hunt your own game, so to speak, but you're in control of your own destiny and you can flex up your work hours. But this is a profession in flux, and I think that there will be evolutions occurring over the next decade that are unlike anything, particularly as the baby boomers complete their age out process, and the newer and next generation comprises a greater percentage of the profession. You're going to see tectonic shifts, I think, and some will be positive, and some will cause indigestion pains.
Yeah. Well, and you have a lot of factors weighing in. And first off, the old adage or the quote that I can't quite seem to nail down an exact attribution from, but I've heard it plenty of times over the last 24 years I've been in business, that the billable hour is the source of all misery, right? It's not a fun way to make a living. billing time.
Yeah, on either side of the equation. It's never fun to know that the egg timer is running, and it's not fun to feel like you're a slave to it either. I think it is very often a source of friction within the sentiments of attorneys.
Yeah, on both sides of the transaction, like you said. And so we definitely have seen some progressive law firms move to fixed price work, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised we haven't seen it move faster, but yes.
Me too. I think because it's such a sea change that it really freaks some people out, but
Mm-hmm.
they'd probably be better off financially if they did it. They'd be liberated from keeping time. And one of my really good friends helps accountants move off of hourly billing onto fixed price work. And in general, their results, they double their income and cut the number of hours they work in half. So they
Sure.
they 4x the amount of money they make per hour by leaving hourly billing and going to fixed price billing for tax returns, audit, advisory. They fixed price everything, put a menu together, and so that he makes his whole business training firms on how to do that, and it's been quite successful. The firms that he works with are too. And I looked at it and went, man, why just accountants? Why stop there? I mean, lawyers do a lot of the same things. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion outside the legal industry about how AI is going to disintermediate lawyers in part or in whole. No, there's a lot of people now who, for simple agreements, just go to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and have it draft a basic agreement for them now instead of going to an attorney. This is happening. There's a million examples of it, and the kind of contracts they produce are really good. Is that really do you think a disintermediative threat for lawyers, or do you think that lawyers are going to get on board with using this, move to fixed price, use AI themselves, and be that final licensed, bar admitted review of the agreement to make sure that ChatGPT didn't have a creative moment, otherwise called a hallucination?
Sure. Well, that's a lot of really good questions all packed into one. So let me just start off with I don't know, but I can tell you just one guy's opinion. I think, in fact, I feel fairly confident that there will be a bit of an all of the above. There will be attorneys who, whether it's their age or just their mindset, who are just simply unwilling or unable to adopt these new and rapidly progressing technologies that can not only be used, as you point out, to disrupt or disintermediate firms, but they can also be used as a very powerful tool internally at firms to bring enormous efficiency to the kind of work product that firms create, with the type of second set of eyes checking that guards against hallucination, that makes sure that it is actually speaking directly to the type of legal product that the customer expects. And so I think it will help some categories of attorneys really accelerate their operational dominance. It will completely obliterate others who just absolutely refuse to adopt it and will eventually just be overtaken. And there's probably going to be shades of gray in between as well.
Yeah, and the phrase I use all the time, because I'm very deeply involved in my carrier clients, TPA clients' operations, and we get very embedded with our clients. As you can imagine, we build the technology that drives insurance companies at JBK. So, and we have our system Terra that does claims and policy. So we're up in the major decisions, and one of the biggest phrases that we say all the time and that we try to reinforce all the time, and then we build it into the systems, is human in the loop. There's got to be a human making the final call, with whether it's an underwriting decision, whether it's a claims handling decision, and of course on the legal side, whether it's a legal opinion, right? If you're drafting, an admitted a lawyer who's passed the bar needs to be reviewing a contract before it goes out, needs to be reviewing a filing before it goes out, needs to be signing off on contracts and employment agreement. But the tooling they use, look, we've used word processors for decades now, and that was a major shift in the industry, right? From typing and manual clerical work. And so there's been a lot of systems. Of course, we didn't have Google, and then we had Google. And so legal research really took a whole new light on when we got online search databases to search for case law. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's been a lot of sea changes, but I feel like this is the biggest one for an industry that produces documents for a living, and the number one fastest growing technology on the planet produces documents for a living.
Absolutely.
And, it's a major change, as long as you have people kind of guarding the gate saying, hey, look, I went to law school. I got licensed, I've got case experience. I I'm going to review this document before it goes out and make sure that it's good to go. Now, you provide liability insurance for lawyers, so obviously, at some level, if a lawyer uses ChatGPT to prepare their filings and they don't check it over, that's going to be a malpractice suit, right?
Absolutely. And we've all seen it. I mean, whether it's been the Wall Street Journal or otherwise, where there have been attorneys who have already been sanctioned publicly for citing cases that didn't exist, and effectively using AI to create a work product that was not checked, and that's a problem. And there's no question that the use of AI will be a more prominent factor in the claims space for legal malpractice. Like anything, it's more complex. It's not going to be all good for attorneys, although it's going to help some firms who use it right leverage it. It's gonna really hurt other firms who resist it, and for firms who do use it wisely, it can be an incredible resource.
Absolutely, it can be a huge deal, can it? So, well, let's kind of wrap. We talked about some really great topics around user experience, which, by the way, I'm super geeked out that you get so involved in, understanding your customer and your prospect's journey to being a customer, right? And that you're so involved in A/B testing. Where do you see the future? You obviously completed an acquisition that allows you. What is your acquisition? And let's go. You very briefly touched on it, but what does your acquisition mean for your company, where you acquired an agent, I believe?
It's a business called Lawyer Care, and they were owned by ProAssurance, and ProAssurance is in the process of being acquired by the Doctors Company, and so that was their legal malpractice division, and so we acquired that, which effectively is the same small firm LPL focus, with one very important distinction. It trades through the brokerage side. So that is, and we are committed to that channel through the Lawyer Care brand to trade through the traditional broker. And then ALPS continues to trade on the direct side. And so it does allow a bit of a balancing in how we focus on distribution.
Yeah, well, allows you to get to more markets, right? That's the whole point.
That's right. I mean, much as insurtechs, I think, broadly thought that they could wholesale disintermediate an entire ecosystem over the course of a few years with a superior product. The reality is it takes a long time with a slow adjustment process. And so we need to be where our customers are, and customers, small firms, do aggregate to the retail brokerage community, who then goes into wholesalers often, and then comes into broker distribution markets. So that's our focus with Lawyer Care.
Awesome. All right, let's close up with let's say, I want to talk about politics, because you thought you mentioned at the beginning of the interview that you thought you were going to go into politics. Was the thought that you'd run for office? You've served on some great board seats, and you've actually gotten really involved. You're a board member on the Bank of Montana. You're a board member of the APCIA. You're a board member of the Missoula, Montana Airport, which of course is a pilot I love. You're on you're a board member of a center at the University of Montana as well. So obviously you've got some leanings towards the University of Montana. But you're also co-founder, president of Grateful Nation Montana. I mean, you're involved. You're a board member for 9 years of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is a very politically active organization. Tell me about your involvement in politics and what it's kind of evolved into for you.
Well, there's the personal side and the professional side, as everybody probably who likes politics and has it intersect professionally can probably relate to this. I have certainly my own personal political views and try to support candidates who I think are going to bring the type of ideology and business sense into their service that I think is healthy for our country, particularly centrists who are focused on civility and civil discourse and respect for one another. But then there's also where our industry intersects with politics, and our industry intersects with politics everywhere, because we work in a regulated industry, and for those who are in the E&S side, if they don't think that they're in a regulated industry, they are, I think, both mistaken. And as more of business moves into the E&S space, I think we'll be more frequently confronted with regulatory challenges. But APCIA is, as you mentioned, and I have the distinct privilege of being the chair-elect of that board. Dino Robusto from CNA is the current chair, and he and I were colleagues at Chubb. He much more senior than I. I look to him as a thought leader, a mentor, somebody with great wisdom. But APCIA is the policymaking juggernaut. AIA and PCI merged years ago, and whether it's in the halls of Congress and advocating for federal reform, or whether it's at the state level, where APCIA is very active at individual state level departments of insurance. It's kind of the century on the tower, this trade. And it's a trade that I think has earned the respect of regulators at the state level and members of Congress and DC alike, because you can trust them. I mean, the staff at APCIA, they're smart. They're smart people who are honest and who present when we're advocating for something. I've watched them present both sides of the story and be careful to help members of Congress understand, based on the lens of politics that they look through, how this issue could be seen. And I think that's why they're so effective, because they're trusted when they walk in the door. So it's really, that's, for me, loving politics on a personal level. It's like catnip to be so involved in the trade organization that kind of is the standard bearer for our industry, for regulation and law as it relates to insurance.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic, very dynamic situation all the time, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You have a lot of pressure from consumers, from business owners, and somebody has to stand in the middle and help mediate the discussion at some level. You have to balance the needs of the policyholders with the needs of the insurer and the needs of the regulator as well, right? Because they have to respond to pressures they have from their voting citizens. You can imagine, of course, this. I've been involved in politics for quite some time. First as a planning and zoning commissioner, then a city councilman, then mayor pro tem of my town. And my dad was on a state central committee for a party, and then he was a city councilman as well. And my great grandfather was a city councilman. So I have a long line to that, and I've had to learn to walk the line on this pretty closely. I can tell you, I, like you, am involved in education. My favorite political position over anything else I've ever been involved in politically is the one I'm in right now. Governor Abbott put me on the board of regents of Texas Southern University, and that is by far the most rewarding thing I've gotten to be involved in politics, because we have 9,000 kids more than that now, 9,400 I think kids at Texas Southern University who are we're trying to change their lives every day, and that it's always really interesting getting involved in regulatory issues and lobbying for business and insurance and all the other reasons you get involved in politics. But I kind of feel like I've found my calling for the next half decade at least in focusing my political attention on higher ed, because it is by far the most rewarding thing I've ever gotten to do. So I'm thrilled that you're so involved in so many different areas of politics and are willing to step into the fray. It's not easy. It's not easy being in politics.
No, it's not. But I have not, made the sacrifice of running for office and subjecting myself to the public scrutiny and at times the vitriol that is so commonly associated with that. But it is necessary, right? Our republic requires people willing to step into those spaces and articulate ideas and defend their perspectives, and ultimately leave the will of the voters to decide who should govern, and then have regular, orderly, peaceful transitions of power at all levels, whether it's the regents in Texas or whether it's the members of Congress and the Senate in DC. It's what our country is founded upon. It what makes us great. And of course, you and I both work in an industry that is the DNA of capitalism, insurance. I mean, if without the ability to transfer risk from one balance sheet to the next, the wheels of progress grind to a very abrupt halt.
They do, completely. Yeah.
So it's a privilege to be a part of it.
Yeah, something I've said often. If you can't insure it, you're not doing it. I mean,
That's right.
As a pilot, if I didn't have insurance, I wouldn't fly. There's too much liability. It's just way too much risk to take on your own. There's too many things could happen that are outside of your control. That could devastate you financially to the point you won't do it. You won't engage in the activity.
Sure.
We'd be very. That's why we always say the FAA may say they regulate aviation, but the insurers really do.
Yeah.
they're the one who decides who can really fly. Well,
Sure.
this has been a great conversation, David. Of course, you and I've been friends for a few years. I appreciate you coming on. It's always good to get to know something new about you every time I get to talk to you. But congratulations on what you've done at ALPS and in public service. And I appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James. It's been a real pleasure. Fun to talk to you in this context, and really, really great to see how you have this platform to reach out to folks in our industry and stimulate intellectual discussion on technology and operations and everything. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thanks, appreciate it. And to all of our listeners in Listenerland, thank you for tuning in today to geek out our interview with David Bell from ALPS. See you next time.
The InsurTech Geek podcast is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. Hosted by James Benham at jamesbenham.com with co-host Rob Galbraith at endofinsurance.com. The show takes listeners on a journey through insurance tech. So enjoy the ride and geek out.